Hi. So today we are looking at birth cards, and Jennifer is to blame because she said, why don't we keep looking at significator cards, which we talked about last week with the court cards, and I said, I don't want to do that. And but then I started thinking about it, and I said, actually, what we talked about some basic ways of choosing significator cards last week when we did court cards, but there's this whole constellation or profile are a couple words that get used for this that you can map out, that includes not only numerological correspondences between your numerology and the tarot, but also all of the astrological correspondences. And then there's other ways of figuring out your year card and things like that. So I thought that would be really fun to go ahead and get everybody working with that. I guess, as you guys probably know, I work a lot with all the astrological correspondences for the cards, and so that's the part that is really of the most interest to me, and that I really focus on when I'm working with clients and working with cards and so on. I'm not very much into numerology, other than the numerology that I'm teaching right now, which is the stuff that's associated with Kabbalah. But regular numerology has never been too much of an interest. And so in that sense, the cards that are based on numerology, I don't use as much in terms of working, in terms of myself or my clients. However, I've always, since, I don't know, probably since I picked up a copy of Mary Greer's Tarot for Yourself, which is the one that Cindy showed us, Who Are You in the Tarot? I believe that's kind of an updated version of Tarot for Yourself. But I also had Angeli's Arrien's Tarot Handbook pretty early on. So at any rate, these ideas were introduced back then, and I've always found it interesting. And I certainly think it's useful to know what your numerology is and to know what the cards are that match that, regardless of how important it ends up being in your life. When I first learned it, I did map out. You can map out your cards, your year cards, you can map it out for your whole life. But I mapped it out for the period that I was in, and it definitely matched. And so I do think that there's something that can be very worthwhile there. Again, as an astrologer, that's my, in terms of working with periods and things, I'm much more interested in using astrology for that. So I'll probably, as we talk, I guess what I'm saying is that as we talk, I'll probably introduce a little bit more in terms of astrology and help you contrast how that's going to work versus how the numerology is going to work in terms of establishing what cycles you're in and what your kind of baseline qualities and profile is. So that said, like I mentioned before, not only am I getting you up really early, and people are still just trying to get their coffee injected, but I'm also going to make you do math. So that's the very first thing that we're going to do. There are different ways of doing the math, and I'm going to talk about that just a little bit to get started. So there's different ways of doing my handwriting is going to be lovely. There's different ways of doing the math. So here we go with May 6, 1974. In standard numerology, what you'll do is you'll do 5 plus 6 plus 1. This is hard to do. Plus 9 plus 7 plus 4. And we would add that up, 32. And so then after we get that number, we add those two digits together, 3 plus 2, and so that brings us to 5. And if you get a book on standard numerology, you'll actually see a category for somebody that's a 32-5. That'll be something. Now, there's another way that's done in particularly with working with birth cards, and that in that way we do 2 digits at a time. So the month, whatever 2 digits, this case it's 05, but if you were in December it would be 12, plus the 2-digit day. And so she's the 6th, but if it was, again, the 24th, you would add plus 24. And then we would do the first 2 digits of the year, which is 19, plus 74, 104. And so how we do it in this method is that when we get these 3-digit numbers, we do the first 2 digits as we do them together. So we get 10, and then we do plus 4. And so that gives us 14. Yay, I got it done. Okay. And this is what's interesting, because of course, when you're doing standard numerology, and you go to the store and buy the greeting card that says you're a 7 or something, then they're doing just that very first one, just adding up all those individual digits, and the goal is to get a single digit between 0 and 9. And 1 and 9, I suppose. But with tarot, of course, what we're trying to do is we're working with birth cards, we're working with the major arcana. And so we're working with the Fool, the Magician, High Priestess, Empress. And so there's 22 cards. It goes through 21, the World, and then because the Fool is 0, and 0 doesn't work with this type of numerology, we give it the number 22. We put it after the World and give the Fool 22. So we're trying to find a number between 1 and 22 to tell us which tarot card is going to work for us. And so now you can see in the first way that we did this, she came out a 5, and that's definitely a tarot card. It's the Hierophant. But did we miss something along the way because we were only trying to get down to a single digit because it was standard numerology? So somebody developed this other method, the 05 plus 06 plus 19 plus 74, to try to more likely produce a number that is greater than 9, but still has a chance of being below 22. And that worked for us. We got 10 plus 4, which is 14. And so then, of course, we would still, 14 is one of her cards, and 14 is Temperance. And we'd still add 4 plus 1 and bring it down to 5. And so she would be Temperance and the Hierophant, 14 and 5. Now, there's one other way of doing it, and this is the way that Mary Greer does it. And that's going to be add your month, the 2-digit month, plus the 2-digit day, plus the 4-digit year. She does the whole thing, and I think partly, well, to be honest, I don't know why, and I'm not a math person, so I don't necessarily, that's supposed to be a 4. I think you guys know that. I don't necessarily understand all the reasons behind how this works or what makes the difference here. So then you get 1985. And somebody put on their Facebook, there was an 8 standing up on a one of those long couches that they have in psychotherapist's office, and the psychotherapist is kind of leaning in, sitting in a chair, and he says, why don't you lie down? And the 8 says, then I'll be here forever. Never mind. So, okay, so we get 1985. See, you get early morning jokes as well as math. And so then we
good.
So then we add the digits one at a time. 1 plus 9 is 10, plus 8 is 18, plus 5 is 23, right? And so that way we get 23, which is just outside of our range. We're trying to get between 1 and 2. So this goes straight to 5. So keep in mind those 3 methods. I'm going to go away from the whiteboard, but go ahead and make whatever notes you need to. This last method here, I'm teaching you all 3 in case you find that you get better results with a different way. But the last way, the way that Mary Greer does it, is a way that we're going to do this today to find our numbers. But again, you're welcome to try all 3 and see if you like one better. But for today, we're going to do the last one, which is the month plus the day plus the full 4-digit year, and then that sum, you'll add the individual numbers. One of the things that I was told when I was first learning about birth cards was that the reason somebody developed that 2-digit thing where it's 05 plus 06 plus 19 plus 74 is to increase the chances of getting that number between 1 and 22. And you saw that in the example we did, that's exactly what happened. We had 5 the first time, we had 14 the second time, and then the third time we had 23, which we had to reduce again down to 5. And so that works really well. That system works really well if you were born in the 1900s. However, once we rolled around to 2000, that system actually works less well than the other 2 systems. And so it worked really, really nicely for a good, strong generation of people, but younger people that, so 2000 or later, I mean, that we're talking people that are under 20 basically, they're not gonna have the same results. So that's why I offered you all 3 ways of doing it. You've got to work with it and find your way of adding that up and finding your numerology. One of the things, of course, that I'm not very good at is I always jump. I'm an Aries. I always jump straight into things, and I try to remember to introduce things, but I'm not always very good at it. And so I didn't really talk about what the number was before I had you doing it, because as an Aries, I just want to add numbers together and find out what my number is. But let's talk about that for a minute. But before we do, does anybody have any questions about how to get their number, and did everybody add up using that last method, your full birth year plus your day plus your month? Did anybody have any trouble with that or not do it yet?
So if we get a number higher than 22, then we just go with the basic number? So we
Yes.
add those 2 numbers? Okay, got it.
Yeah. And so what that does, and so good. Now I'll go ahead and explain a little bit about what these numbers are.
I have a question.
Okay.
So if we're going by Greer's method, and are we using the birth card method and Greer's method, or just?
No, we're using Greer's method, and it is maybe I should explain some of the history of this. Mary Greer studied with, so this is Mary Greer's book, Tarot for Yourself, and the profile that we're doing is coming out of this book.
Okay.
Mary Greer studied with this woman, Angelise Arrien.
Gotcha.
And she wrote this book called The Tarot Handbook. Now, Mary Greer studied with her pretty early on, long before Angeles wrote this book. And Angeles taught this method of doing the birth cards. And Mary Greer loved it so much that she asked her if she could write a book about it. And Angeles said, sure, go ahead. And so Mary Greer wrote Tarot for Yourself to share the idea of birth cards and to share the work that Angeles had done. And so Angeles and Mary both use the month plus day plus 4-digit year. Somewhere later on, somebody else said, well, look, if you do it this way, you tend to get slightly different results. And so they developed an alternate way of doing it. It tends to be somehow, and I'm not sure how, I think that's the way the tarot school does it. So the tarot school is pretty popular and pretty influential. I think that's just how that got into being one of the primary, if possibly the primary way of doing it, even though the older way that Mary Greer does it, I personally tend to like better. And it has more history. So that's a long answer. So let's go ahead and talk about what the numbers mean. And so in numerology, and this is whatever the lowest number is, even if you get two numbers like 18, and we again reduce that, we always reduce our 14 and 5, 18 goes down to 9, 15 goes down to 6. That lowest number is in numerology, it's usually called your destiny number or something like that, your life path number. I learned numerology in a day. I used to do readings for this big, enormous corporate event every year, and there was 5 of us readers, and we had to do 5-minute readings. They're like no longer. We've got so many people to get through, so 5 of us are sitting there doing 5-minute readings. And one year we were always doing tarot, and one year they wanted something different, one of the guys warned me. He said, if she contacts you and asks you if you do numerology, say yes. And so she contacted me, and I said, sure, I do numerology. So I got an app and studied up, and I did numerology that night. And I actually had somebody say, wow, you're really good. You should do this for a living. And I'm like, well, reading people, yes. Doing numerology, no, I will not be doing that for a living. So I went back to tarot cards after that. But you can learn the basics of numerology pretty quickly, and that main number is your life path number. And so that's the number that people say, oh, I'm a 7 or I'm a 10 or not a 10. Yeah, it's a 1. 10s go to 1 in that system. So I'm a 9 or I'm a 3 or something like that. Obviously, I'm not going to talk very much about that because other than studying it for that one night of doing it, I don't remember very much of what I learned. And that's another thing. It's, if something's right for me, I tend to really remember it and retain it really quickly. So at any rate, so that's numerology. Now going into birth cards, Mary Greer divides it up, and she has what she calls your personality card and your soul card. And so this is where it gets interesting. So when we did the middle method, she came out 14, which is temperance, and then 5, which is the Hierophant. And so her pair of birth cards doing that system is 14-5. Mary Greer has what she calls a personality card and a soul card. And so when we added using Mary Greer's method, it went straight to 5. It was 23-5. And 23 doesn't count. It's one beyond our range. Her personality is 5 and her soul card is 5. 14 still comes up, and we'll examine that later. 14 becomes her hidden factor or hidden teacher card. You said that you also went to 5 when you did Mary Greer's method. Did you go with her method? Did you stop at 14 or go straight to 5?
With Mary Greer's, I was at 23 and then went to 5.
Okay, so yeah, and that answers your question. Just you knew the answer, but yes, you are correct.
Well, and that's why I was like, I want to make sure that I was doing it right. But yeah, but it was interesting, especially because when you did the birth card method. So that's why I was like, okay, wait,
Yeah, and this is why I give you different ways. The last time I taught this, which was quite a number of years ago, probably 7 years ago, everybody was up in arms for the math part. And I was like, oh God, please help me teach this okay today. So yeah, your personality number is 5 and your soul card number is 5. So Hierophant for both. Now, Tammy, we saw reduced down to 18. So she's in that range of 1 to 22. So her personality card is 18, the moon, and her soul card is 9, the hermit. And so anybody else have a question about personality card and soul card, just in terms of the math itself?
You know, Joy, this is Joan. I have a question because I get 3 numbers, so I'm a 19, 10, 1. So when I come to the personality thing, is that 19 and 10? And then the soul is 1?
You get all 3, and you came to, when you did Mary Greer's method, did you come to you came to 19, right?
Yes.
So 19 is your personality.
Okay.
And 1 is your soul card.
Okay.
And 10 is your hidden factor or hidden teacher card.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
Yeah. So if you had come to 10 using that method, then 10 would be your personality, 1 would be your soul, and 19 would be your hidden factor or teacher card.
Oh, okay.
Great. Yeah, and this is one of the things that I like so much about Mary Greer's method that we don't really properly get in the other method, is we get the idea of the hidden teacher. Because I'm a 7 and I'm 25/7, so I go straight to 7. And so my personality card is 7 and my soul card is 7. But but 16, which is the tower, still plays in, and so it's my hidden factor card or my hidden teacher card. Some people, and when I read I tried to, well, I can't say I read, but I tried to skim through a few articles online just to see what other people were saying about this in preparation for today. And I was coming across people that weren't understanding it right, and were saying you only have a hidden factor card if you're in one of those groups of 3. And the groups of 3 are 22, 13, 4, which is the Fool, Death, Emperor. 21, 12, 3, which is the World, Hanged Man, Empress, and 20, 11, 2, Judgment, Justice, and the High Priestess, and 19, 10, 1, which is what Joan just mentioned that she has. Is there anybody else here besides Joan that has one of the groups of 3, whether it's 22, 13, 4, or another group of 3 like that?
I don't know if I have a group of 3, but on the middle method, I got 17, and for the rest, I get 8.
Okay, and so if I were, how I would work with that, Natalie, is that I would do 8 is your personality card, 8 is your soul card, so strength for both personality and soul, and 17 is a hidden factor teacher card. But if you, again,
okay, that's how I was looking at it, so I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, and again, some people don't work with that hidden factor thing. For me, I really like the way it plays out. That's probably the thing that most drew me to what Mary Greer was doing. I guess the way I see it is as, I suppose, not so much an expression, but a lesson. Like, this is something to work with, to understand, to learn to express that energy, but it's not as naturally present for you. Whereas if somebody comes up straight to 17, then that's going to be more of a natural expression for them. And then the idea is to also learn to kind of hone in and focus down from 17 into 8 and bring that soul expression through as well. But the 17 is easily expressed. When you use Mary Greer's method and you go straight to 8, then 17 is a shadow element. It's implied just through the math, but it's not as fully brought into expression, but usually needs to be or wants to be, whatever that hidden factor card is. Does that answer people's questions about this first idea of the personality card, the soul card, and the hidden factor card?
No, I'm actually lost in the soul card. So
Okay.
I have the last one and it turns out to be an 8, but then how do I get the soul card?
So tell me what number did you come down to?
26 at the end, with the very
Okay.
last method.
Okay, so 26, 8. And so, yeah, so you're the 8, which is strength. 8 is your personality card. And 8 is your soul card. And I'll talk more about the personality and soul too. I guess I didn't express those very well yet either. So both personality and soul are 8. And then the hidden factor for you, just like for Natalie, is 17, the star.
Oh, because it's 1 and 7?
Yes.
Even if the combination of numbers turns out to be 26? So I get
Yes.
a 26, so okay.
Yeah, yep, you got it. Anybody else have any questions?
Hi, Joy. Okay, so
Yes.
maybe just to keep it simple, if your birthday, when you're doing all the addition, if you can reduce it down to a number between 1 and 9, that's basically your personality card and your soul card. And then when you do the extra one, if you get any number between 1 and 22, that is just a hidden factor.
I'm not sure if I totally understood you. Your personality card can be anywhere between 1 and 22.
Oh, okay.
And then the soul card is always between 1 and 9.
Okay. Okay.
And I'm going to keep saying that just in case somebody else listening, you're a Gemini, you go straight there, but I'm going to finish the thought for anybody else listening. Okay. So a personality card can be anything between 1 and 22.
Okay.
The soul card is always between 1 and 9.
Perfect.
The hidden factor card comes up if you get the set of 3 cards, which are the 4 sets that I mentioned, or if you go straight to the single digit and didn't hit between 10 and 22, if you go straight to the single digit, then the matching number between 10 and 22 is your hidden factor.
Okay, got it.
So going to the handout now. So our personality card, that indicates life purpose, aspirations. It can represent lessons to be learned, but it's really, the personality is more about our expression in this lifetime. And it is a base expression, base, but not base as being negative, but base meaning baseline. It's our baseline, how we on average show up on an average day. That's our baseline, is our personality number. Our soul card is more of the energy that we bring lifetime after lifetime. And so it could be an energy that we that has been with us, and so we come to it a little bit more readily, but it also can be I also see it more as an energy that extends throughout lifetimes. It's an energy that, trying to put it more into some more mundane terminology, the soul card is more of I guess I always like using the word highest expression, or the phrase highest expression. It's more the essence, our spiritual essence. And so it has a more, well, and I guess the other thing that I would say is, especially looking at the cards, when you're looking at the cards from 1 to 9, there's more of this, they're all in the Major Arcana, they're all archetypal, but between 1 and 9 have a more basic essence to them. And then after 10, there's a little bit more complexity to them. So I see the complexity as being the complexity of our personality and the complexity of our day-to-day life, and the more archetypal or simple or concentrated energy being the more unified aspect of the soul, and the more straightforward or concentrated expression of the spiritual self or the spiritual essence. Does that make any sense? I'm not quite sure how to explain it.
It makes sense.
Does it make sense? Okay. The soul card, how it said, what it says, and this stuff I pulled from Mary Greer, the soul card says it indicates soul purpose and the qualities that will assist me. So coming into the hidden factor, or the teacher card, and that can be shadow elements, things that you fear, reject, don't see, and she says that overcoming them can be your greatest strength. And I do think that there's definitely can be a shadow element with them, even, and remember, it can, even positive things can have a shadow element if you reject them in yourself. I mean, a couple people are saying, our 8s, we have more than one 8 here, 8 personality, 8 soul, and so their hidden factor is 17. The stars is a beautiful card about spiritual connection and about guidance, and being able to follow your own intuition and your own guidance, being able to navigate your way through life through spiritual connection and through again, intuition. And so you know, that's a really wonderful quality. And so we wouldn't necessarily, a lot of people might think of shadow things as the idea of things that we fear, things that we reject, but there can be a lot of power in that when you are able to and it makes sense. I'm thinking now, I'm thinking of you guys that are at that number, and I'm like, and you tend to be very rational people that maybe are not maybe are not always trying, you know, thinking every day, how can I connect with spirit, and how can I follow my intuition in this particular example? You know, maybe when you get home from the day, you're like, oh yeah, I want to work on this, I want to add that into my life, but it's not your natural way of navigating through life. So that's, I guess that's a good way of explaining the personality card tends to be how you naturally navigate through a day or through your life. And the hidden factor is not how you naturally navigate through, but something that you don't naturally do, that if you integrate it is going to give you a big assist, a big boost in terms of just approaching, navigating, moving through and managing your life. Any other questions about that? You can see, as you can see, there are readers. I am not one of them. There are readers that will do full, like, 2-hour sessions with people just looking at these 3 cards. And you can see that once you get going with it, there can be a lot of depth to it as you start to unfold all the ramifications of each number, of the idea of personality versus soul versus teacher, and then beyond that, looking at the cards themselves. Let's go ahead and do the zodiac tarot symbols and then the year cards. I think we can probably do that fairly quickly, and I can just tell you guys what these are. So your zodiac or sun sign card is going to be the Major Arcana card that matches your astrological sign, your sun sign. And so if you're, I'll just go through in order. If you're Aries, it's going to be the Emperor. If you're Taurus, it'll be the Hierophant. Gemini is as I have all I can think of is a Knight of Swords. Gemini is the Lover's card. Cancer is the Chariot. Leo is Strength. Virgo is the Hermit. Libra is Justice. Scorpio is Death. Sagittarius is Temperance. Capricorn is the Devil. Aquarius is the Star. And Pisces is the Moon. The zodiac lessons and opportunities, these are the minor arcana cards that correspond to your sun sign. And so there's 3 that correspond to each sign in the zodiac, and there'll only be 1 that matches the date that you were born. But that, does she cover that later? Yes, and so that's the next one, which is the Destiny card, is how she calls it. So your zodiac lessons and opportunity cards, if you're an Aries, it's going to be 2, 3, and 4 of Wands. If you're a Taurus, it'll be the 5, 6, and 7 of Coins. Gemini is the 8, 9, and 10 of Swords. Cancer is the 2, 3, 4 of Cups. Leo is the 5, 6, 7 of Wands. Virgo is the 8, 9, 10 of Coins. Libra is the 2, 3, 4 of Swords. Scorpio is the 5, 6, 7 of Cups. If I start to repeat myself, let me know. I think I'm getting them all right, but the rhythm interferes with my process. The 9, Sagittarius is the 8, 9, and 10 of Wands. Capricorn, 2, 3, 4 of Coins. Aquarius, 5, 6, 7 of Swords. And Pisces is the 8, 9, and 10 of Cups. And so your actual birth date, for instance, May 6th is the second decan of Taurus, and so that'll be the 6 of Coins for that one. But all of that is on the last page of the handout. I don't know that you can really see that well or not, but it has all of that stuff, and you can look up your date and find out your tarot trump, your court card, and your tarot pip card.
Joy, can I ask a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you getting all this information out of that book of Mary Greer's?
Yes, all of this is in Mary Greer's book.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask another quick question on
Yeah,
the numerological lessons and opportunity cards? It's just like if your soul number is 8, then it's the 8 of Wands, 8 of Cups, 8 of Swords, 8 of Pentacles, right?
Yes, that's on here somewhere. Which one was it? Oh, yeah, I guess I skipped that. Yes, you're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So now I want to go to year cards, because I think this is one of the things that, like I said, the zodiac tarot symbols, that actually is something that I work with quite frequently for myself and for my clients. So I like that stuff. And the persona cards down at the bottom, the personal potential card, the inner teacher card, mode of expression in the world. I don't call them that, but those are the cards that I tend to work with. So I guess what I want to say about that is that if you stick with classes that I teach or meetups that I lead, you're much more likely to come across those cards, or even possibly getting a reading with me. You're more likely to come across those cards and have me talking about them. So for today, I want to kind of focus on the ones that I don't normally talk about. And so that's why I want to go to the year cards next. So the current year card, and what you're going to do now is you're going to add, same way we did it before, Mary Greer's method, you're going to add the month of your birth, the day of your birth, and the 4-digit year, except this time the year is this year, 2020. We've got 5 plus 6 plus 2020. And so that's 11 plus 4 is 15. And so her year card is 15. Primarily, we're going to only look at 15 as the main theme for the year. And 15 is the devil, which is Capricorn. And so it's going to represent kind of a nose to the grindstone type of experience for the year. Now, if we look at last year, so 2019 plus 5 plus 6 equals 2030. And so that 2030 reduces to 5. And so last year she had a 5-year, which is Hierophant. And this is what's really interesting, is that usually you'll have like a magician year, a high priestess year, an empress year, an emperor year, a Hierophant year. But then there's always a break. He went from a Hierophant year, not into a 6, the lovers, but into 15, the devil. And so that's a really, and of course that's coming, that hasn't happened yet. It starts at your birthday. And then upcoming years, probably we're going to look at going from 15 to 16 to 17. But you'll have to add that up and double check. So, but that's really nice to map those out, and you can get a whole string of years, like I said, that'll go in order, and then you'll have those breaks. Those breaks are really interesting to watch because they do indicate a major shift. Now, obviously, there's some general things in life that obviously right now, anybody that I'm talking to would be like, well, I've got a major shift this year, but she'll find out that there's something above and beyond the general circumstances of the world, above and beyond that is shifting in her life. And if you're able to try to strip away what is me versus what is all the external influences, she'll find something that's shifting in her that is unrelated to the external environment. And that'll be coming up for her after her birthday. One of the reasons I like to teach this, well, I don't like to teach it, I teach it more often. One of the reasons I do teach it once in a while, and I think that it's valuable, is that a lot of people will say, oh, here's the card for the year, or this is my card for the year. But a lot of times they don't know about the birth card system. And so all they've done, once you start to talk to them about it or read something they've posted somewhere, it turns out that what they've done is just on their birthday, they pulled a card and it's like, oh, this is my card for the year. And there's nothing wrong with that, and that works fine. But I like systems. I've got I got a strong 10th house. And so some of that devil Capricorn energy comes through with me. I like systems, and this is more of a system than it is a random draw. And the thing about a system is that then we can start to see patterns, and patterns are really useful for planning and for being able to understand, how we move through life. And so having a system like the birth cards doesn't just turn up a random card every year. It might seem boring at first because you're like, yep, I was the Empress last year, and this year I'm the Emperor, and it might seem like it's just going in order, but when you start to look at, and again, when you have one card that represents your whole year, you're looking at general themes. But when you look at those general themes, you'll start to see really interesting little things. Like you come up with a lover's year, you might end up in a relationship that year. 5 to 15 instead of going 5 to 6. So instead of having a focus of a relationship this year, actually she'll go to Devil, which is Capricorn, which is career. So she's much more likely to skip, a year that's focused on relationship and move into a year that is heavily focused, or much more heavily focused, on career development. So so that's kind of an example of how these work. Likewise, people can talk about a card for the year. So when 2020 rolled around, everybody was like, this year's card is the Emperor, because 2 + 0 + 2 + 0 4, and that's the Emperor, and that's great. But again, now we're looking at the Emperor as the year card for the whole world for the whole year, and so, or maybe not this different cultures or countries that have a different calendar, they might get a different card. But a lot of us that use the Western calendar, a whole bunch of us are going to be using the Emperor for the whole year. I like to again, the more general something is, the less I tend to value it. I like to hone into the more personal. And not that there's not value, but I just really like to find more specific information. And so so using the year card, your year card, which takes 2020 and then adds your birthday to it, that gives you a much more personal interpretation of how this year is going to play out for you. One more thing, and then I'll let you guys ask some questions. This book, you can see this book has tons of little workbook pages and little things that you can fill out. And so it's useful. I haven't actually ever read it, but it just every time I flip through it when I'm teaching this class, I'm like, oh, it looks like there's so many cool things in here. She gives you an opportunity to map out. She gives you a graph where you can map out your year card for your whole life, and so so that can be a little practice to do. And it shows you those cycles and where the breaks are. It graphs it so you get the cycles and the breaks. Here's an example. So you can see how it got graphed, and there's sequences, and then there's a break in another sequence. And that's really, I think that one I found to be really cool to do that. Now the first card, when you have a break like that, the first card of the break sets an overall theme. So even if it's 15, 16, 17, 18, 16 will be the Tower card in the category or in the overall cycle of the Devil, and then 17, the Star, will be the star year in the overall cycle of the Devil.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Just in general, how do you say, or how well would you say this jives with astrology? If it's based on numerology, which is sort of astrology, but not quite. I mean, do you ever do a reading for somebody and know their astrology and say, well, that just doesn't make any sense. That doesn't coincide? Or do you always say, oh yeah, that makes total sense based on her astrology? Of course she would be that personality, or of course she would have that hidden factor. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
and yeah, and I do use a lot of astrology. That's one of my main things, and I don't use this numerology, so I actually can't tell you that. Only can tell you based on my own personal experience, and I like astrology a lot better. That's one of the reasons I very rarely teach this. However, like I said, I think it's really important to know a lot of people in the tarot community work with this, and maybe some of those people that work with it more than I do would come up with a better answer for you on that. I find that the astrology is more interesting. I'll give you an example. My number cards, my personality and soul card are both 7, which is the Chariot. Well, I've got Chariot is Cancer. I've got Cancer rising and Cancer moon. The Chariot as Cancer is a stretch anyway, and I've worked with that long and hard to understand it, and I do now. Which I won't go into, but I do have a blog post on it. And so that the Chariot really makes a lot of sense to me. But the Tower also makes a lot of sense, but I'm an Aries, and so Mars rules my sun sign, and the Tower is Mars. And so the Tower makes a lot of sense for me. So when you put the Tower and the Chariot together, that makes sense.
Interestingly, that's also mine. I am
okay.
The Chariot, and then the Tower is the hidden thing too.
Oh,
So,
okay,
yeah.
good. So we both have the same thing. What's your astrology?
Well, I don't know. I'm May 18th. May 18th.
So Taurus, are you Taurus then?
Yeah.
And so do you know your moon or your rising?
Yes. I'm Aries rising and Leo moon.
Well, and I could start to try to argue that and say that, well, Taurus is like Cancer and that they're both feminine signs, but one is fixed earth and one is cardinal water, and so there's not a lot in common there. Certainly the Aries rising and the Leo moon are fire, and so that definitely matches with the hidden teacher card. And again, I wish I'd worked with it more. I'd rather use astrology, and that's, and I guess I feel bad because I feel like as an astrologer, I should not teach birth cards. It's not my right to teach birth cards. Somebody that loves them should teach them, but I do think it's valuable information. I think if somebody's not interested in astrology, I think it really provides a good opportunity to find ways to understand yourself.
So it has value. What I think is it has value, and it's a good maybe door opener for self-discovery, even if it's not as accurate to the minute detail as astrology can. I don't know astrology that well, but the things I've read about myself, I'm like, oh my God, that is so freaky. But I couldn't do it for anybody else. I can only look at myself. But anyway, so I was just curious how it all goes together.
There's a woman, and I was trying to find her book to recommend to you, and I couldn't find it, so I don't know if she never published it or what was going on with that, or if she just included birth card information in a book on another topic. But she emailed me at the time because I had a lot of questions. She emailed me something and said that had my for my birth set, which was the 16th 7. But what's really interesting is that, like I said, I never got into numerology very much, which is part of the problem with me not valuing the birth cards as well as I should. But when her paragraph that she had on the number 7 was like you're saying with astrology for you, even though I don't know numerology very well, I was like, whoa, she kind of really hit me really like right on, in that paragraph about what 7s are like. So and they're, I mean, just even the basic idea of 7, they're usually considered there's a kind of a spiritual bent, but there's a lot of focus on like learning and teaching and things like that. So it's kind of like, oh yeah, I
Well,
even before I started doing a lot of teaching, I was definitely had that kind of 7 quality.
And I can't figure out how that goes with the Chariot either, although I do see the Chariot in myself a lot. I admit to that. I'm not proud of a lot of it, but I admit to it. But yeah, so 7 in numerology means something, seems to me, a whole lot different than the Chariot. So I don't know how you reconcile that either.
Well, and that's a really good question, because the truth of the matter is, you're right, it doesn't match to numerology, but, and this is where it gets interesting, the Chariot doesn't match very well to astrology either. Some of them match better. The Chariot's not one of them, because the Chariot, almost all pre-tarot iconography of chariots is almost always the idea of a war chariot. A 2-horse chariot is a war chariot. 4-horse chariots are more regal or ceremonial, or for a parade, or for, you know, the sun god, his chariot has 4 horses, but a 2-horse chariot is going to be a war chariot. And so the chariot as Cancer doesn't make very much sense. Cancer's not very warrior-like. It's considered the mother. You know, Mars is debilitated in Cancer. Mars is the warrior. So it doesn't make a lot of sense. One of the really, and this is probably the best argument for doing birth cards and for spending, or not necessarily for doing them, but just for spending the time on trying to figure it out and meditating with it, studying, doing your own work with it, is that by really striving to understand and reconcile 2 disparate symbols, we tend to achieve I guess I want to say like a synergistic, I want to say integration, but there's also a synergy to that integration, and it brings out all kinds of depth that just a simple symbol couldn't bring. So the idea of reconciling contradictory symbols brings a great depth to something. So yeah, if 7 and the Chariot don't match for you, that's okay. Working to understand that might just open something up that you had never, that had just never occurred to you before, or had never been your way of looking at it before.
Yeah, makes sense.
The last thing I want to say before I bring this to an end is that now that you know your cards, I'll put a link up on Meetup with some ways of interpreting them. But what I encourage you to do is do your own interpretation. I think that's the only way you'll ever really find the value in this. It's fun to read other people's interpretations, but doing your own work is what's going to produce the best results for you. And so if you can, one of the great ways of doing it, and the woman that sent me the chapter from her book, she did it just like this, and it's a technique that I like as well, is to find the similarities and the differences between the cards. And so she had, for the Tower and the Chariot, she said there's a crown on the top of the Tower that's knocked off. She said the crown is knocked off. On the Chariot, he has a crown, it's firmly on his head. She said Chariot, crown is on the head. And she, the people that are falling out of the Tower, they're wearing loose clothing, they look disheveled. In the Chariot card, he's nicely dressed, he's got armor on, he looks very proper and not disheveled, the opposite of disheveled, but also guarded and protected, and so on and so forth. And protection, Cheryl, that's one of the examples of Cancer for the Chariot is that he's armored like the crab, you know, the soft interior, the hard shell idea. And so there's one of your common associations there. But at any rate, we could keep going between what are the differences between these two cards, and what are the similarities. So that's the first thing I would do to keep working with this, because obviously we just can't get a whole lot done in this time frame. Go ahead and make a list of all the differences between your two cards and all the similarities, and then start to kind of contrast them and dig into those differences and those, you know, what is similar between two very different cards. Kind of dig into that and start to find some kind of expression that starts to make sense to you between this idea of personality and soul, or between soul and teacher, or whatever combination you had. Does anybody have any other questions?
I do. I have 3.
Okay.
So I get the significance between the personality, the soul, and the hidden factor or the teacher card. What is it if they're all 3 the same card?
The hidden teacher, by definition, is not going to be the same as the other 2. But there's still the question to ask is, okay, well, my personality and my soul card.
So my personality and my soul were 5. So that means my hidden card is temperance, is 14.
Yeah. Okay. And so you can start by just examining personality and soul, and those are more, for you have more of a natural unity towards that. And your day-to-day expression and your spiritual essence move in very parallel ways throughout your life.
Yeah.
And so that's just a simple way of looking at that. And then the idea is to then look at that hidden factor card or the teacher card and see what have you been missing, because you've been kind of unified. What have you been missing, and how can you make sure you bring more of that into your expression?
Okay. And then on the zodiac correspondence chart, you didn't really talk much about the tarot court cards. What are those for?
It's under on the handout on page 1. It goes under persona cards.
Oh,
and
okay.
So you can just look at that. It still doesn't explain very much of it. That's where I get my significator cards. Not from this, just somebody asked me about that before. I learned a totally different system, so this did not influence me. I work with the Golden Dawn system, and so I learned all of this through that system, but she's following that system when she developed this.
Okay. I'm really curious about I was trying to look up on your back blogs about your double Cancer with Moon and Rising that you said you wrote about, and I couldn't find it.
Oh, I wrote about the Chariot as Cancer.
Gotcha. Yes.
And so that you should be able to find.
Okay. I'll look it up. All right. Awesome. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. Like I said, I'm kind of a lousy teacher for this particular topic, but hopefully it gets you thinking and gets you stirred up and contemplating your numerology, your astrology, and just your general use of tarot and what works best for you to understand yourself and your life.
And you're an awesome teacher. That's why we're here.
Thank you.
You're not lousy.
Thank you, Joy. It was a pleasure as always.
Yep, it was a great job.
Thank you.
Looking forward to another
Bye,
one.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.